This is Steve McGrath, and welcome back to Beyond the Helmet. Now, in this episode, we're not going to be talking about football. We're going to be talking basketball. We're talking to Malcolm Lemmons, a guy at a young age, after becoming an honorable all-mention in the NCAA, took his dreams of becoming a pro athlete to then move to Japan. He chased his dream in Tokyo. So he rerouted his life to go overseas, and in the few years that since then, he's written multiple books, starting with Lessons from the Game in 2017, and now he is gearing up for Impact Beyond the Game. What Malcolm is concentrating on now in life post-pro athlete is helping other athletes navigate that space, how to build their influence, monetize their brand, create a legacy. In his new book that's coming out this month is all about that, Impact Beyond the Game. So we're going to talk about the book and everything that led up to him writing it. So without any further ado, here's my foray into talking basketball with Malcolm Lemmons. All right. I am pleased to be joined by a former basketball player, author, podcast host, and entrepreneur, Malcolm Lemmons. Malcolm, thank you for taking the time today, man.
Steve, I appreciate you having me, man.
And like I told you from the jump, despite my background, despite who I normally talk to, I know that this is a basketball athlete, not a football athlete. And I'm really happy to change it up because, man, it doesn't, sometimes the sport doesn't matter. The path is almost exactly the same. It's unbelievable the parallels that athletes go through despite what ball they might be using.
hmm Yeah, for sure, for sure. The difficulties and the struggles that you go through as an athlete are pretty similar across the board, especially when you're trying to work towards a professional career. So there's some truth behind that for sure.
Now, back in 2017, you wrote your first book, and that came off the heels of you going through a professional basketball experience being overseas. So just to sort of lay the foundation, what's it like being that 21, 22-year-old kid that moves across the world to, I believe it's Japan, right?
Yeah, it was terrifying. I mean, to say the least. I was fortunate enough to go over there with a couple of other players that I knew, but still being in a completely different world from what you've grown up accustomed to, and having to acclimate to new beliefs and the food, everything from the food, the language, like all these different changes that you kind of got to get used to fairly quickly. It was very scary for me personally, and I struggled. I struggled those first couple of weeks that I was out there. End up leaving early, but what it taught me more than anything was that I could survive and I could go anywhere on this planet and I would be okay because I had gone through that experience and kind of lived through that obstacle in my life.
In sort of getting that realization under your belt that, hey, I can do this, and if I can do this, I can do anything. How much did that just sort of kick open doors for you to do whatever you set your mind to and ultimately be in this situation, 2 books later and everything else that you're working on post being a pro athlete?
Yeah, I would definitely say it plays a part in my mindset today, especially coming from the athlete world. I think just having that perseverance, that determination, that kind of just that the willingness to do anything in order to achieve a goal type mindset. Going through that experience overseas and being in Japan that first year really just kind of added fuel to that mindset and kind of just gave me what I needed to continue pushing forward, whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish, just putting my mind to it and kind of just doing what I need to do in order to succeed.
Got it. And when you're playing overseas, it's so much different than the football landscape where it's kind of like the NFL, there's the CFL, and then for a long time that was it. Now we've had, different leagues like the XFL just popped up, and there's always been a little bit of change there. Basketball, very different world. When you start to play overseas, do you have in your mindset that I want to ultimately always try to get back to the NBA, or is it one of those things where I'm happy to be playing professionally? There's all these other options. Let's just see where the road goes.
I think it definitely depends on the type of player you are. For me personally, coming from a smaller school, not really having the exposure of a high major school, playing overseas was really my only option. I might have had a shot to play in the D League, G League as it's called now, but it was the D League back then. I worked out for a couple of D League teams, but the NBA wasn't really on my radar. Not because I didn't believe I could play at that level, but frankly, the politics that play a part in sports, and just that whole arena that you have to navigate as an athlete is very challenging when you get to the professional ranks. So when I was overseas, man, I felt like this was it for me. I felt like, I could get paid doing something I love, travel to different countries, get those experiences, and do my couple of years playing pro and get out. So that was my entire mindset, and I was, really focused on that.
And you've been, for anyone that pays attention to you, and I've certainly been a fan for the last year or two, paying attention to your podcast, writing, seeing the articles that you write, your social media. You've expressed that it's when you get to overseas, in being abroad, that you really start to find this, love of writing. How does it ultimately come about that you find that there's just this thing in you that you finally have a chance to let it bloom?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. So I mean, hindsight, I look back on my life, and I always wrote just for fun. It was just something that I did, but I never really realized how naturally it came to me until that second year playing overseas. And I had actually come in the middle of the season. It was right after Thanksgiving. I left the day after Thanksgiving, and I came, and we had maybe a month-long break there where we weren't playing any games. We were just practicing for maybe an hour or two a day, and I just had the rest of the day to do whatever I wanted. And so those first couple weeks that I was out in Japan that second year, I didn't know my teammates. I didn't really know the city well that I was living in. I didn't have anything to do, but I had a computer in front of me. I didn't have Wi-Fi yet, and so when you're sitting in a small loft outside of Tokyo, and you have nothing else to do with your time, you become really creative really fast. And so I just thought about my experiences as an athlete, some of the things that I had been through up until that point, and how this whole me, becoming a professional athlete kind of came about. And I just started to type. I just started to kind of put my story out there, and really just, you know, for me, it was therapy. It was me just kind of releasing all these thoughts and things that I had been through in my life, on the computer. And so, long story short, that's how it happened. I came back home and was able to publish my first book, and I realized after that was that, writing was something that just came, like I said, naturally to me. It was something that was very therapeutic, and it was the best way that I knew how to tell my story. And I think, everyone has a story. Everybody has gone through things in life, and you have to find the best way or best medium for you to express that. And writing was that for me.
Definitely. And that's how Lessons from the Game comes together, which of course brings us to Impact Beyond the Game, set to come out just a couple weeks from now in mid-July. Everything that I see that you talk about and post about, Impact Beyond the Game, that those four words sum up, I feel like, the major theme of almost anything that you do. So it feels like that name might have been obvious, but can you just talk a little bit about what went into the vision for this book and how you ultimately decided to construct your thoughts in a way that made sense for someone to read?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I actually, have had this idea, this concept in my mind for a number of years now. And as technology has begun to evolve in social media and things of that nature, and athletes really being in a position where they can kind of control their narrative and kind of tell the story straight from the horse's mouth, I began to see how prevalent this was in the sports industry, and how many athletes will have opportunities the more they can create content and put that message out into the world and talk about who they are and what they're interested in, how that kind of builds that bridge and creates that relationship that provides other avenues outside of sports. And so this was something that I thought about a lot. And uh, everything that's happening with name, image, and likeness, it was kind of like, foresight for me personally. But it was just something that I felt like athletes needed to understand during their careers. And I feel like I didn't do the best job I can of taking advantage of my platform and the opportunities that I had during my athletic career. And so I wanted this book to really be, kind of just a blueprint for athletes to take a lot of the strategies and tactics that I've been able to utilize with me building my own personal brand, and some of the things that I've seen with some of the biggest athlete brands in the world, such as LeBron James and Serena Williams and Cristiano Ronaldo, and all these different athletes who have begun to build businesses and create ventures outside of sports, and how their brand plays a part in that. I wanted the smaller athletes, the athletes you might not know or might not hear about, to understand why this is so important, and to understand how, when you do this, when you take advantage of your platform and control your narrative and talk about the things and the person you are outside of the jersey, how that can present so many different opportunities and avenues during your athletic career and even in life after sports. And so that's really what the book is about. I'm all about athletes creating a legacy and doing something that's bigger than just the sport that they play, because it comes a point in time where you have to put the ball down and to do something else in life. And so this book is a catalyst for all of that.
Oh yeah, it's so important in the perfect storm of name, image, likeness. Being right now at the forefront of every college athlete's mind is just a great situation for you in the timing of the book.
Yeah.
How much? I mean, social media just completely changed the game for how athletes can approach this. There's never been an easier time for an athlete to actually express who they are, whether it's through any social media platform, let alone leveraging multiple at the same time, having YouTube out there. I mean, you no longer need to rely on your team's marketing strategy to get your name out there. More so than ever, it's been so easy to just put your thoughts out there, grow a following, and actually have some personality, despite what jersey you wear.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think it's an incredible time, and even thinking further than that, just the opportunities to monetize. And that's not really my focus when it comes to student athletes. But I think when you look at the professional athlete landscape and the opportunities that they have, whether that's from brand partnerships and social media deals to creating their own T-shirt lines to having their own podcast to affiliate marketing and on and on and on. All these different opportunities kind of take your story and expand it and to really create other revenue streams outside of sports. I think is it's just an incredible time to be an athlete.
Oh yeah, in streams of revenue, it doesn't matter what you do. I think that's the answer to anyone's situation is always being able to diversify and have other streams. It's the one surefire way to make sure you're at least doing everything you can to set yourself up for financial success. Never being too dependent on one thing. That being said, have the main thing always be the main thing,
Right.
but make sure that you have those little contributory streams alongside of it. That being said, I know as an entrepreneur, you've used the player's point, media entity to help push this, what your experience and where you're coming from forward. What are some of the, maybe without giving away any trade secrets here, what are some of the main basic points that you would express to any athlete when it comes to just sort of setting themselves up for that level of success?
Yeah, so I think the first thing would to be has to be authenticity and being transparent about who you are as an individual. I think a lot of times um, people on social media try to portray this image of being something that they're not and trying to live this perfect life, when I think the opposite. uh, Expressing your insecurities and being very transparent about whether that's the some of the struggles you might be going through, or some of the things you might experience in your life is the actual key that opens up the door for all those different opportunities, because that's how we relate as people, is that storytelling ability and your ability to communicate as a person and to get people to resonate with some of the things that you've experienced in your life. That to me is the most important thing when you talk about building a platform and a brand that's sustainable over a long period of time. So I would say that definitely has to be at the forefront. And then uh, another thing I really stress to athletes is consistency. When you see a lot of athletes maybe post on social media once or twice a week, and then they'll disappear for a number of weeks, and that kind of, it doesn't really build that same connection with your follower base and establish a strengthen your audience. So I think being consistent and being frequent with your message is also very important, and then playing the long game and being extremely patient, because building a brand, especially one that uh, can create a ton of different revenue streams and create a ton of different opportunities, doesn't happen overnight. It takes years and years of brand building, and this is something that's done in perpetuity. It's not something that you just have and then you can't do it anymore. You're always brand building. You're always connecting with people. You're always trying to find a new way to kind of tell your story or put out your message. So those are really the 3 points that I kind of key in on when it comes to any athlete at any level, and what I try to get them to understand when it comes to social media and telling your story and trying to build your platform to sustainability.
Yeah, yeah, good, great points. But one thing I think about when I hear this is how do you find that voice? I mean, it's you had to kind of go overseas and kind of experience this, I don't want to say transition, but you have this moment where you start to move in an avenue where you really find your voice. And maybe it's you found a way to, project your voice, but maybe you always had it, but you found a way to get it out there. What do you say? What are just your thoughts about an athlete finding that voice where maybe they just had a very low key profile, or it was always very specific to game day and there wasn't too much out there besides of what everyone already knows about them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say don't get it twisted. It definitely took me a while to kind of get to the point that I'm at now. It didn't happen right away. It took a lot of trial and error, I should say. But I would tell any athlete to don't overthink it. A lot of times when people are hesitant to put out content and kind of tell their story on social media because they're worried about what people might say or people critiquing them or having an opinion, negative reaction or opinion about their content. Don't overthink it and don't worry about the people who might hate on you or might have something to say. That's what I'm saying, you have to kind of put that behind you. And I mean, as an athlete, you should already have kind of thick skin from playing in adverse situations. So I would say don't overthink your content. Be as consistent as possible. And one thing that I like to say is that a lot of people think it's quality over quantity, which it is, but you need quantity to get to quality. And so you have to put out a lot of stuff to figure out what ultimately works. What is quality to your audience? What do people resonate with the most? What do they like to see? And you won't really understand that. You won't get that unless you're putting out a lot of content over an extended period of time to understand what resonates with your audience, with your follower base the most.
Definitely. Now, another thing, and I've seen you've referenced this before in some of your articles, is sort of tackling that lack of knowledge about something. Whether it's an athlete that doesn't understand the social media game and sort of leveraging the platform that they have, or it's just about I want to transition out of what I'm doing. Maybe the door's shutting on me being a professional athlete. I don't know what to do next because I just lack that knowledge. What are just some of your best, tips on kind of getting over that fear in how to test the water to figure out what maybe you do want to do next?
Yeah, I mean, that fear is going to be there. I think it's there for every athlete, and every athlete kind of struggles from some level when it comes to transitioning and kind of figure out what they want to do next. But it's really as simple as just diving in. And if there's something that you think you might want to be interested or might be interested in and might want to pursue, it's just doing it. It's just going out there. You think you might want to get into media and start a podcast. You got to Google, look up how to start a podcast. You can figure it out in a weekend. You know what I'm saying? So it's about just being humble enough to try new things and starting from ground zero, having that humility and having the confidence to accept that you might fail or you might not like this thing and you might have to move on. But you won't figure that out unless you just actually try and put yourself in a position to where you're trying to learn and fail and grow and to figure out what you want to do the rest of your life. So I would say that taking a couple of years, if you have, from a financial perspective, if you're able to, just try different things. And if you don't like it, scrap it and keep moving forward. But to me, that's little when it comes to looking at the rest of your life and finding something that gives you fulfillment and that you love to do. So I highly suggest that athletes try as many things as possible. And then it goes back to that patience aspect, being extremely patient with the process, because there might be, tons of things you don't like, or you might come across something that you hate and you have to move on. And it might be a frustrating process at first, but eventually you'll get to the point where you actually find something that you genuinely love and that you want to pursue.
Yeah, like anything, the pursuit is half of it, and having that patience and being able to again be humble enough to actually try these different things, put your ego aside, realize that whatever this is, it's new territory, but gotta go out there and jump and sink or swim.
Yeah, and I think that's really hard for athletes to do because you think about what being an athlete entails, and it's having attention on you. It's having people want to be around you because you're an athlete. And so when those lights fade and you don't have that same attention or the same people
Sure.
reaching out to you, that's extremely hard to do. It's hard to stomach. So it's something that athletes, I can see an athletes, a lot of athletes struggling with, but it's extremely important when it comes to, your next career step and figuring out what that's going to be for you.
And ultimately, it sounds like it's mindset. You have to think about it the right way for you to have a chance to be successful at it, while also not getting too down on yourself about this transition. It doesn't matter if you were Tom Brady. If for the first act of your career, you might not be Tom Brady in the second act. At least
Right.
right away, give yourself some time. Just be open to the fact that there's going to be a learning curve.
Right. 100%.
I just wanted to bring it back a little bit toward your college basketball days, and even before that, because from the jump, I said the parallels between sports. It almost doesn't matter what ball you're using. I say that to the extent of you dealt with adversity, right? If I have this right, at one point you were cut from your high school team. You really had to double down on your efforts to even get a shot to play. Um, I think even that where you initially committed, the coach left, and then Niagara kind of came together last second. So, do you mind just talking about? You don't need to necessarily address anything in particular, but the adversity of having to weather the storm, dealing with the fact that things are going to change, there's going to be hurdles that are thrown your way. How do you ultimately persist, and how does that, those that scar tissue that you kind of build up to that, how does that carry you to be able to eventually play overseas and to be successful outside of sports?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I actually remember the day that I got cut from the varsity team as a sophomore, and it was one of the worst days of my life. I just remember going home that day and telling my mom, and I had tears in my eyes, man. I was going to give up on the game. I was done playing basketball, and she looked at me and she said, "You have two choices in life. You're going to go through things that you have no control over sometimes, and you only have two options. You can quit and move on and do something else, or if there's something that you really want, you can play JV this year and then prove everybody wrong, and then make the varsity team next year." And so I made a decision in that moment that, this dream I had as a child to become a professional athlete. I made a decision in that moment that, nothing was going to deter me from achieving that, whether, no matter how many obstacles I had to go through, how much adversity I had to face, I was going to ultimately achieve this goal because I wanted it that bad. And when you want something, from the depths of your heart, you're gonna run through brick walls to try to achieve it. And that was me. I was that kid from that moment on. And so uh, I think it's just having that mindset when it just goes back to really, really genuinely wanting something. You're gonna put everything on the line. You're gonna sacrifice. You're gonna do the things that other people won't do in order to achieve this thing if you really want it. And I've kind of transferred that mindset over into the business ventures that I'm involved in, or it's writing a book, or just any setback that I endure in life. I think back to that time when I was a sophomore, and I refocused my mindset. I put myself in a position to think like, if this is something that I want, then I'm gonna do whatever I can to make it happen for myself. So that's what it's about to me. And I think you hit it on the head when you said mindset earlier, man. It's just all about how you think and the things that you tell yourself.
Oh, mindset is everything. But how many times did you have to tell yourself, Michael Jordan got cut from his varsity team too? Michael Jordan got cut too.
I don't think I actually said that, man, but that's a good point. That's a good point. I wasn't Michael Jordan, but
There's only ever been one, so that's not a knock against you. Now, just as someone that grew up loving basketball, I always felt that basketball was one of the easiest games to be influenced by someone playing. It was so easy to take someone's style or a move and incorporate into what you were doing. Did you ever have that one guy that you really looked at and said, "Oh man, I need to do this just like him"?
I've never got that question before. I went through a lot of different. I was a fan of a lot of different players growing up, but I would say that it might not have been a particular move, but Tracy McGrady, everything that T Mac did, I tried to emulate him. I used to
I
buy
had
T
those
Mac
shoes.
shoes. Yeah, I used to buy the shoes and everything. They weren't the best shoes, but I was a huge T Mac fan. I wasn't even that big of a Kobe fan, but T Mac was my guy for a number of years.
I got that. Malcolm, as we get towards wrapping this up, you do transfer your senior year. You go across the country. You play out in California. You become an All American there. What was it about that opportunity that allowed you to really flourish on the court, have your best season? Meanwhile, the team has great success too. I think it's an Elite Eight run that you guys have. How does that come together? And what sort of fingerprints of success did you see from that personally and as a team that you were able to then sort of take with you to find future success?
Man, you've done your research for sure. But that was I took that leap. So kind of taking a step back. My junior year at Niagara, we played in the NIT, lost to Maryland, and we had an incredible season, incredible team, and we expected everybody to come back the next year. We're going to make a run at the tournament. It just didn't happen that way. The whole coaching staff left that year. 8 players transferred in total, and so I felt like at the time that my heart just wasn't at Niagara anymore. A lot of the reason why I stayed at that school was because of the teammates and the bond that I had. It was truly a brotherhood, and I'm still close with a lot of those players today. But I felt like with more than half of the team transferring and the coaching staff gone, it just wasn't the best opportunity for me to continue pursuing my athletic career. So a teammate that played on the team a year prior to my junior year had actually left and transferred to Cal State San Marcos that year. So as soon as he heard like the whole team was being disbanded, he reached out to me and he said, "Look, Malcolm," he was like, "you got 1 year left to play in college. I know you want to play pro. I'm playing at this small NAIA school out in San Diego. It's beautiful. School's only been around for 20 years. The basketball team is new, but we have a great coach. He's trying to put together a great group of players, and you're definitely going to play a lot." Didn't know anything about San Diego. Maybe I'd been to California once in my life. Never heard of the school. Didn't even know what NAIA was. But I took a leap of faith, man. I went out there, took my visit in June, and fell in love with San Diego. It's probably the most beautiful place in this country. And fell in love with the team and the coaching staff, and really just felt like in my heart it was the best decision if I wanted to continue playing and ultimately reach that goal of being a pro. And went out there and had the best year I ever had playing basketball. As you said, All-American Defensive Player of the Year. We had a lot of guys who on that team who were seniors who had, for one reason or another, left from the Division One programs. Either got kicked off the team or just went through some type of obstacle where they wanted a fresh start. So it was kind of like this rebellious group of athletes, but we all had a chip on our shoulder, and we were extremely dedicated and really wanted to win an NAIA championship and kind of prove everybody who doubted us wrong. That didn't happen, but obviously we had an incredible season, 32-2, I want to say, or 32-3. I think we lost the last game in the Elite Eight, but just a really well put together team and scrappy guys, and one of the funnest years I ever had playing basketball. And so I owe a lot to my former teammate out there, and owe a lot to that coaching staff and the opportunity that they gave me, and forever will cherish those moments, that experience that I had playing at Cal State.
Got it. Well, Malcolm, as I get to wrapping it up here, normally I have a quick hitter segment that I call the Gauntlet for basketball. I don't know, maybe I'll just call it the full court press. I just got a couple things I need your knee-jerk answer on. Game's on the line, 3-pointer to win. Where on the court are you taking your shot?
The left wing.
Left wing. All right.
Yeah.
Now, you already sort of talked about who influenced your game the most with the Tracy McGrady shout out. Did you have someone like that as you looked to transition into being a professional outside of sports? Did you have a particular mentor or someone who you really looked toward?
Oh, that's a great question. There's a lot of people I look towards now. I would say that Magic Johnson is one of the biggest role models and virtual mentors, I like to call them, that I look up to. Him and Kobe Bryant were probably two of the biggest people that I aspired to be like while I was kind of transitioning out.
Got it. Now, we could have gone forever on this, but do you have a short elevator on what is your why now?
Short elevator on what is my why? To leave, I would say in the simplest terms, to leave the world, a better place than I came here as. So, I mean, it sounds so cliche, but just to make an impact and a difference in the best way that I know how.
Got it. Now, Was there ever one player you just wish you would have had a chance to play with?
Play with. Nah, man. I mean, I have to put LeBron James on that list.
Okay,
I gotta say LeBron.
that's fair. Considering everything you've been able to accomplish, man, what's just the best piece of advice that you would give?
uh, trust your journey, trust the process. There's especially in the world that we're living in today, and a lot of the events that are surrounding social justice and even COVID, and people are going through a lot of adversity and struggles, but just trusting the process, having faith in what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to do in life is so important, and having that resiliency and optimism to continue pushing on, I think, is everything.
Got it. Wise words. So to wrap this up again, Malcolm, it is The Impact Beyond the Game. It's the name of your book, coming out in just a couple weeks. Thank you so much for coming on. For everyone, check out the Players Point podcast if you want to hear more about Malcolm, malcolmlemmons.com to read some of his articles. And of course, you are all over social media. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, man, Steve, I appreciate the opportunity. Anybody who wants to get in touch with me, I'm very accessible, like you said, across all social media platforms. So reach out. Love to meet new people. So please check out the book Impact Beyond the Game, July 21st.
There you have it.